Welcome. Welcome to our broadcast. Leoni's going to be talking to you today, the second module of 3 on the 7 rays. Next slide, please, Astrid. And the next. Okay. We've got you all on mute right now. I think most of you have attended our webinars before. We do that to minimize noise, otherwise we get a lot of background noise. So if you raise your hand, if we call on you, if we unmute you, as soon as you finish speaking, please put yourself on self-mute. Okay? You see the little microphone there on the screen? That's how you do it. You touch the microphone and you'll see the red line go through it. That's how you put yourself on and take yourself off if you are on self-mute. If you do have problems, if you hear echoes or if you hear background noise, mute yourself first and see if that helps the problem. If not, then type us a little note in the chat or the question box, and we'll see if we can figure out what the problem is. Okay? Next slide, please, Astrid. For you guys all know how to do the hands. Thank you very much. We just saw that. If it's green and pointing upwards, it means your hand is down. If it's red and pointing downwards, it means your hand is already up and you have the opportunity to put it down. Next slide, please. Okay, this is where you enter questions to us. You may not see the block. Look and see if there's a plus sign there on the questions, and if there is, just touch the plus sign and it will expand the question block for you so you can see where you can type your question to us. Okay? Leoni, will you be taking questions as you go, or would you like students to wait for a pause?
No. I would like students to ask questions at any time, and I'd just like to say also that because we have a smaller class today, that there's going to be more discussion. So as we go through the rays, I might ask members of the staff to talk about their rays, and also ask any student who thinks that they might have a certain ray within them, invite you also to talk, and I really encourage you to do so, because it makes it a more, from my perspective, a richer webinar if we can exchange our views online. So please put your hand up anytime with any question, and I'll do my best to answer it. Thanks, Biel.
Okay, well, actually, next slide. Over to you, Leoni.
Okay. Thank you. So we are in the second module, and just the next slide, thanks, Astrid. And for those who may not have been here last time, I'm unable to show my computer screen because there is in the upload speed and my screen freezes. So I have Astrid, we're looking at her computer, and so when you hear me say next screen, Astrid, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now this is a slide from last month's webinar, and it just gives a little overview of the rays, and just like to talk a little bit again about how the rays work in the universe. So if we throw our imagination back to the dawn of time, with the Big Bang period when the universe came into creation and being, according to esoteric history, that is when the white universal ray divides into the 7 rays, which are just the gives colouring and quality to everything in the universe. We are told by Helena Blavatsky that the great 7 lords, she calls them primeval lords, are the great lords of the universe, and there is one great Davic entity called Lord that embodies the different rays, and there are 7 of them. in Christianity we have the archangels and that. So these great energies and that they pour out through the Davic lives and they colour and build the bodies of everything in the universe. So we have our monadic life, which gives life to everything in the universe. It is the rays and the different qualities of each ray which might be building the mind that an entity works through, or the emotions in the case of humanity, or their physical body, which determines to a certain extent the differences. And so going to the screen, there are three main lines of these rays, though the first and the spirit rays and the intelligence rays, the Tibetan both calls them hardline rays. And the soft line rays are rays 2, 4 and 6, and you can see them in the center, and those are the more the feeling, emotional or the intuitive ray as well, because the Buddhic line comes through that stream of energy as well. And so last month we talked about the soft line rays and how they play out in the personality. The major rays are rays 1, 2 and 3, and they have lower rays which really are reflections of the parent ray. Today we'll be talking and looking at the hardline power rays, spiritual rays. Spiritual fire flows through that ray and through the people who are on that ray. And on the intelligence line we'll be looking at those as well, and we have rays 3 and rays 5, the intelligent activity ray and the concrete mind and science ray. And so we'll be looking at the personalities and the souls of people through whom those rays flow as well. The really important thing to remember, students, is that the rays are very neutral. They're just an energy that goes out. And depending upon the type of consciousness which is receiving that energy and using it, then you will get different expressions of that ray energy. And so if you have somebody, for example, if we look at the human kingdom, someone who's very low down on the path from ignorance to enlightenment, still very much in that ignorant stage, and I'm talking about being ignorant of the spiritual teachings and not being advanced in building the mind body or building the bridge to the soul. In such people who are still dominated largely by their personality and their selfishness, and they're self-absorbed, which is just a very natural state for most people on earth who are still around that level, then you would expect to see a more negative expression of that ray type. And as people progress and become more soul-infused and step onto the path, and as their consciousness expands, then you will start to see more of the altruistic and higher expressions of the rays themselves. And so it all depends upon where a person stands on the path as to how a person might express that ray energy. And so, for example, if you see people in the world like we have, and I'll take extreme examples, like an Adolf Hitler. He was quite very advanced intellectually, probably was an aspirant on the path who had taken the left-hand path. But he was using his first-ray power very, very negatively, and we saw the results of that. He used the power and destructive ability of that ray that was flowing through him in very terrible and destructive ways on earth. And similarly, perhaps if we go look for a negative example, and we'll cover probably these people again as we go through. I'm just trying to give an example now. If we have a look at very intelligent people who are still quite selfish and self-absorbed, we might look at somebody like Bernie Madoff, for example, who ran the big Ponzi scheme, which is said to have been the biggest fraud that's ever been known in the world, and I don't know how many millions or billions that were lost by people when he was exposed. But he's a really good example of someone on that intelligence line that used that sacred energy quite negatively. And then we might go up to the higher, like Bill Gates definitely is using the energy positively. And over on the first ray, we have the great example of FDR, Roosevelt, who the Tibetans said was a first-ray disciple, using that power for the higher good to try and fight off the evil Nazi influence. All right, next slide, thanks, Astrid. So that's just an overview. So those rays come out and they really affect us, and we will do with them what we will, depending upon where we stand in our consciousness. How much of our consciousness is being infused by the personality and how much is being infused by the soul. It all depends upon that. Now in this slide, it's just a little one I put together to try and give a pictorial representation of how energies move. And of course, on these hardline rays, we'll be looking at those a little bit more carefully in a short moment. Astrid, or someone's, I can hear noise always in the background. Perhaps you may need to mute yourselves. Thank you. And so for ray 1, it drives straight forward. And so when people have got ray 1 in them strongly somewhere, and it's usually either in the personality, if it's not in the soul level, it'll be in the personality or their mind. You see first ray people with their minds, and they go like this, and their fingers go like this. So the energy of first ray is forward moving, and it's very fast, like a laser beam. So that's how first ray energy moves. If we're looking at its lower aspect, which is ray 7, then it moves in a forward direction, but it's a graceful gliding forward. And I've got a little horse there, and just imagine that clopping forward in a very graceful manner. So still moving in a forward direction, but much more in a much more orderly fashion. And of course, ray 7 is the ray of order and ceremony and magic, ritual. And ray 2 is very cyclical and folding. It's a soft energy. Ray 2 really has very soft boundaries. So you can see, if you think of the circle and the sun especially radiating itself out, that's a wonderful symbol for ray 2. The ray 4 energy oscillates backwards and forwards, and it usually goes from side to side. So I don't know if you can see me like that, but ray 4 people have a tendency to go like this with their heads, because ray 4 is quite widely spread in people's mind rays, and I have a ray 4 mind. You might see me sometimes going like this with my head. So just watch for those traits in myself, because you will see me on the screen. I don't know how well you can see me, but that's I do have that habit. I've seen that all going like this, ray 4. Whereas ray 6 are very fiery. They're halfway between 2 and 1, that they very fiery and outgoing energy goes out from the heart. It's the idealistic ray after all. And so ray 6 pours out like a flood, or like a fiery flame. Moving to the mind rays, we have ray 3, which is the basic energy of nature. And so ray people, 3 people, is very versatile, energetic ray. And so some undisciplined ray 3 personality types can be really frenetic and restless and moving around, and that's why I've got that little picture of jumping up and down and the little drawing. And on the other hand, the other type of mind energy, the 5th ray of concrete mind and science, it moves in like the direction. It's quite forward moving actually, but it circumscribes and examines a little piece of information, and it's not until it's satisfied with understanding that little bit of information that it moves forward, and then it examines another little piece of information and moves forward. So that's just a little overview of the rays. Move forward, thanks Astrid. And we'll lay the foundation for, and the next one, for our what we're going to be going into with the rays. And so, that shouldn't be there. We're supposed to be on the hardline rays. Just go forward another one, Astrid. Yes, there. Next one. So a little bit of trouble with our slideshow, but that's all right if we're there. So we're now on the first ray energy of will and power. And I want you to start thinking also as we go through this webinar about whether you might have this somewhere in your nature. It would, if you do, it would either be a soul ray energy, personality ray energy, or a mind ray energy, because those are the three levels that in everyone accepting disciples the first ray flows through. And I am hypothesizing a first ray personality. So as I give this presentation, you might start examining me and seeing if I have any of these traits in me. So let's look at some of the pictures, and you will see these pictures are supposed to convey the energy of it. So I just want you now to imagine, look at the central picture of that big explosion. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that's a nuclear explosion or a volcano exploding, but it doesn't really matter. I want you to build a picture in your mind's eye of a volcano exploding. You must have seen it on TV or pictures somewhere, and I want you to, as you visualize that picture, I want you to feel the energy. Imagine that you can feel the shock wave of that explosion coming at you and hitting you, and we've seen what it does to when there's a gale blowing or an explosion like this, how whole villages can be flattened, forests can be flattened. I remember when St. Helens exploded about, how long ago was it, 10 years ago or something, it flattened forests all around it. And so that is the first ray energy, and I want you to imagine now that you are dealing with a person who might have that first ray energy in them. And so that is what first ray types are trying to control. Now, of course, if they aren't controlling it well, if they have it as their personality ray, you will get things like dictators coming out, and I've got a little picture down the bottom of a dictator, which is really the only negative that I have on this page here. But what this ray does give, it gives strength and the power to rule, and it gives a truthfulness and a fearlessness. And the reason why ray 1 people can be truthful, whether they're high types or low types, and that's just, I just use those words just to describe the different levels of consciousness. The reason why people on ray 1 can be so truthful is they're fearless. They usually don't care about the consequences if they're unwise. And ray 1 people may think that they're more powerful than others, and they don't need others. They don't need the support of others. So they have this inbuilt latent belief in their invincibility, and that's the first ray energy it gives. And of course the professions that it rules are the legal or the law profession, the legal profession, the enforcement profession, police and the armies and things like that. And on the right hand side I've got rulers, leaders, and so you have first ray leaders, and they can be overseers, managers, executives. You can have a first-ray leader in the home, and some of us may have had a first-ray mother who ruled her house like a rod of iron, or a first-ray father who was the dominant parent, or may have had a first-ray sibling who terrorized us when we were children because they could be so hard and bossy with it all. And so first-ray does not necessarily reside just in leaders. People on all levels of society can have that ray flowing through them. And then two great symbols that I have is the sword and the eagle soaring. And on the left-hand side, I've got a redwood tree. And so all those trees in nature that are very tall and straight, they have first-ray energy is encompassing or flowing through those trees. And so that just gives you a little idea about the energy of the first ray. So holding that thought and feeling about that explosive energy as it comes out through an explosion of some sort. We'll go to the next slide, Astrid. We'll start to have a look at some of the personalities, famous personalities who have been on that ray. And I put personalities up there. Karl Marx is in the middle, and I thought later, well, I shouldn't have really put him in there because I was, and Rupert Murdoch, we could argue about, but I wanted to really give extreme famous examples of people who had first ray in them somewhere. And of course, every dictator in the world has probably a first-ray personality. So two examples I've given on the screen. First is Hitler, and we have Saddam Hussein. These people just get up into the front of their people, their countries, their political parties, and take over parties by the force of their personality. The wonderful thing about and what happens, of course, in society when we get these strong types coming out, most of society, and this is really important for the those who are taking the Great Quest course, because you're looking at different levels of consciousness in that course and examining them. Most human beings on Earth, according to the Tibetan, have not yet developed their mind, body, and their ability to think and rationalize to any extent that it can control their emotional nature. And the Tibetan said most people on Earth, he wrote back in 30s, 40s, but at that stage I don't think it's changed that much since then. Most people are controlled by their emotional bodies. And so when they come into the presence of powerful people like we're looking at, or any powerful person, such people are, if they, those people are giving out a message which resonates with their emotions, with their prejudices, with their biases, with their likes and dislikes, then they gravitate towards that person and adore them, worship them, follow them. And we see that everywhere. And in Australia here, we've had some very powerful leaders, and not so long ago, and I didn't put her up here, I should have put her up here, we had this Australian politician called Pauline Hanson, and she was powerful in politics here about 10 years ago. And the reason that she became very famous and popular is she had a very racist message, particularly against the indigenous people, the Aborigines, and she was preaching and taking a stand about all the assistance that they receive from the government, special places provided for them in universities. She was absolutely opposed to that, and she said that was racist. And so she became very popular, and in the federal election she won 11 seats, which I think in our body is about 90 seats now. That's a huge amount of people that supported her, and it really does give a good idea about just how many people were drawn to her message, and you could say how many people weren't evolved enough to have compassion for the Aboriginals, which really is a race that's dying out, and they have some terrible living conditions. And so this is why these people, first-rate people especially, can pull in so many followers, is because if they give a message out that appeals to people's selfishness, to their greed, even to their fears, of course, well, then people will look to them as being a protector and a leader. And of course, so many German people, as we know, were drawn to Hitler. He had a rapid rise to power and glory in Germany. And in Iraq, of course, Saddam Hussein was very powerful. Jim Jones, as we know, the leader, I just forget the name of the spiritual group that he started, but we became very powerful spiritual leader in the United States. And when he started to run afoul of the law, moved out into South America. And then when he started to have politicians from the United States go down there and investigate what he was doing, well, he killed the politician who went down there, and I can't remember his name, sorry. And then they killed all the followers as well. And so he had first rate in him as well, was able to magnetize those people in, and then use his power to destroy the people when he was going to realize that he was going to lose his little kingdom down there, would rather destroy everything than allow people to really go their own way, which just really shows how far he was down in that path of evil. And the same with Hitler, of course, who had these grandiose ideas of creating the new Germany and the master race and that pure race. And we know history tells us about the atrocities that he committed. And Saddam Hussein ran afoul of the Bush family, some people say, and he was made a target, and of course he lost his life in a most terrible way as well. The Tibetan says somewhere that dictators usually come to a very hard end, and the reason being is they have such hard ideas and they cause such big trouble and cause such harm in their communities, and perhaps even in other nations as well, as Hitler did, that they have some severe karma coming back to them. Now, I put Rupert Murdoch down in the bottom left-hand side, and of course he is the great, very, very powerful man, ruling as he does so many news outlets throughout the world. He certainly dominates Australian politics. He is an Australian-born man and now has US citizenship. But whenever he owns the major newspapers down here, and whichever way his politics are leaning, he's very right-wing. You see in his newspaper, The Australian is the most widely read and bought in Australia. So many journalists mirroring and parroting what he has to say. There's certainly in most of the major newspapers in Australia, in my opinion, they are not independent, and their journalists are not independent in how they write. They're so slanted, at least in his newspapers, towards the right point of view. So, and I believe that he has a very negative effect on Australian politics like that, because he's just so powerful, and his money can buy political power and that, and he certainly rules the tone of the newspapers, which is so influential going out. And of course he owns some of the news at Fox. He owns Fox as well, the TV program, so that broadcasts his message as well. So he is a new age messenger of one, if depending upon your politics, of the perhaps the more negative, lower type. In the middle, I've got another New Age messenger, which is Karl Marx, who was said by some to be the father of communism. I really would not place him there. I think that some of his ideas were very liberal, and he wanted to free the oppressed people. And so he put an idea out how people manifested it. Was really up to them, and so it's interesting that I meant to take him out, but he was still there. I would not have put him there. I think that he was definitely an aspirant, maybe a disciple. Maybe his ideas were a bit slanted one way or the other, but I think at heart he really had the goodwill of the people and the masses at heart, cared about them, and that is the measure as far as I am concerned and as far as the teachings go of where a person stands on the path. How far has a person's heart opened up to be compassionate and caring for the masses? If that is opening up, then they're definitely on the path, and if they don't care of stuff and they just close down, not on the path. Or if they are on the path, perhaps like Hitler was, because he was an esotericist and occultist, if they are on the path, they've probably gone down the left-hand path of black magic. So, are there any questions? Now, I've got a first-ray personality. Oh, I see we've used up quite a lot of time, so maybe if I talk at this rate, I might use all the time up. But I've certainly, in my history, have had, I would claim, arrogant. I've been really arrogant at some stage and full of pride. Don't think I've ever been power hungry. I used to try and control, and that's a real thing, that first ray, so trying to control everything around you, and oh, give that to me, I'll do it, you know, you can't do it, so you can do it faster and better than other people. Don't think of being cruel or violent, and haven't had that unrelenting ambition, but certainly the arrogance, pride and controlling, I can claim those. And I wondered, Astrid, I don't know if you can turn on your webcam, and we've got one of the other organisers, Astrid, who has a first-ray personality as well. And Astrid, would you like to talk about your first-ray personality and how you have seen it evolve over the years, please?
Hi, Leoni. Hi, everybody. Yes, I believe I have a lot of first-ray personality. When she comes to the fore, I have named her she who can handle anything. She's like a bulldozer. She moves forward, gets what she wants, overcomes most hurdles. She has intellectual arrogance. She can usually see past the fancy words and get to the nut of a problem. She's not nearly as arrogant as she used to be, so she is mellowing. So the positive sides are coming out in her personality now, but she who can handle anything is always in the background, and she will come forward when she's needed. Thanks, Leoni.
Okay, thanks for that, Astrid. And I know Astrid well. She lives here in Brisbane with me, and seen her learning to handle that energy. But the way, of course, first-ray types, the lessons are very hard because you're so strong-willed. When you won't change unless something really stops you if you're stubborn, and most first-ray types are stubborn. And so the lessons that you have are quite hard, and it's only when you're faced with a disaster of some sort. For example, I'll give an example. When I was a manager, I've always been a manager wherever I've gone. I used to try and run my department like a little dictator, and I had allotted how much time they could spend on this task and that task, and if they were spending too much time, I started to not be happy with them. And it got to the stage where my staff rebelled and said they weren't going to work for me anymore. And I had to sit down and think about that, and I remember thinking, oh golly, I mightn't get my go up to the next manager level if all my staff abandoned me. So there were all thoughts about how it was going to affect my career and how I was going to progress. That was a very difficult lesson for me, and I shared that with you. It was the most tremendous lesson of my life because I really had to sit down and think about what I was doing and how I was using my energy. And people were very vocal and verbal at me about that. So that was my big experience in life, and sort of really helped me think about changing my management style, which I really did, and so it's been completely different ever since then. Next slide, thanks Astrid. And so that's a little bit, oh well, before we go on, are any students, do they think they have the first ray in them somewhere, a first ray maybe personality, and have a bit of that control thing going on? Because if so, can you please put your hand up? No one. All right. Okay, so we'll have a look now. We've got someone, Karsten. Karsten, put your hand up again, and if you'd like to talk about yourself. Could you unmute, Karsten?
Yeah,
and
sure. Hold on just a second.
Tell us, Karsten, a little bit about yourself.
Me?
Yes.
I sometimes in my life take the control, and it's kind of. I've been a salesman, traveling on the road and visiting people and selling stuff, and I'm often in the groups. I'm often the one who get the ideas and just putting through something, and I have some of the positive and the negative traits, I think. But I don't know, it's the personality or what. I think I have a third ray soul, but I'm not sure about anything of this ray stuff. Okay?
All right, thanks, Karsten. That's good. Yes, as soon as you said selling and things like that, I thought of the third ray as well. Of course, you could have both. And the thing is about people who are in our work, when in a spiritual group such as we are, we would expect to, if we've got any of the rays, that we will have some of the negatives and some of the positives, because we're not perfect yet. We're not enlightened beings. We've got one foot that's walking along the path, and every now and then we can revert back to some of the lower energies. So, and that is the natural, the way that it goes. So thank you for sharing, and that's really, really good. So I can see, going back to the slide now, I've got Karl Marxson here as well.
I'm sorry, Andrea she had her hand up, and there was another one that went down that I didn't catch. Andrea, did you have some comments?
Yes, Andrea, would you like to share?
Yes, I definitely have the first ray in me. I think it's the personality. I can relate to a lot of things that you say, but I also see the energy of the ray coming in an impersonal way, like coming in and disturbing the status quo, like at different stages, and changing things overnight. For instance, I can give an example. I used to smoke, and one day I resolved that I wasn't going to smoke anymore, and that was it. Next day, I never picked up a cigarette again. It's been 25 years. So I see that resolve, I see that assertiveness, I see that, and of course many of the negative traits as well that I've been working with. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Andrea. I had myself muted. That was very interesting about the smoking. I had the exact same experience, and it could have been about 25 years ago, maybe 30 years. I decided I would give it up, and within a month I had given it up like that and have never gone back to it. So, you know, it is that resolve, and of course it is a negative, but once we start to use it positively, the Tibetan said Ray 1 types take heaven by storm, and what he meant is when you get a Ray 1 type on the path, then they can really travel very quickly towards the goal, as they do towards any goal. So I guess you have that same thing going with you. Once you make your mind up, you can really move towards that goal very quickly. Would that be correct?
That's right.
Mm. All right, thank you, Andrea, and we're looking now at the screen, and you can see the bulldog is down there, and look to the right, we've got Winston Churchill. So, I mean, you know, you can, and I think that he was called at some stage a bulldog of a type of man, but he certainly developed the look of it. So there we have some wonderful first-rate types, and the two greatest, perhaps, politicians are we have Abraham Lincoln up in the top right, perhaps the most advanced Ray 1 type that we have ever known in more modern times. The Tibetan talked about him and he said he was a representative, the higher representative of the higher Ray 1 type. And at the time, I think he said that Bismarck, the German ruler, was the lower example of the type. But Abraham Lincoln, you know, wonderful man. And if you can remember what his body looked like, he was a tall, like a drain pipe, tall and skinny, so one can really see that first ray energy in him. And if you look at his face, no flesh on it, even though it's hard, very, very hard, yeah, because there's no quality coming through there. He's just looking at the screen. I don't know if that's a painting. I think it was a photograph, but very, very hard face, or the bones, but of course a very advanced man. And on the left we have Roosevelt, and the Tibetan said he was a first-ray disciple, and he and Churchill, of course, came in at the time of the Second World War, and they were the leaders who pulled the West through. We owe such a debt to those two great men and their ability to rally the forces around them and to fight off the Nazi evil. Really two great warriors, first-ray warriors, so great debt to them. And then we have Dr. Phil McGraw, that a lot of people might watch. He's very popular. We watch him out here in Australia, who's really reshaping the way that people think a lot about through his program on psychology. And then Hillary Clinton a lot, and of course that's a beautiful first-ray picture, and when she talks she goes like this, so she's got that first-ray action of going forward. And so great first-ray types, all of them on the path in my opinion, some of them absolutely, probably that Lincoln was a soul, it may have even been a Davic, very, very advanced Davic presence that came through. He was way beyond, one would think, even the fifth mastership initiation, but who knows. Definitely Roosevelt would have been an initiate, probably, was around that third initiation of full infusion of soul with personality. Perhaps still hadn't quite taken that. He had a few personal things going on. But anyway, that's the first ray, and that's how it plays through. And remember what I said, if you have it in you, it would be either on the soul level, on the personality level, or on the mind level, unless you are a disciple, and then you can have it anywhere. Okay, so we'll move on now to the next slide, thank you, and I better start hurrying up because I can see the time is all. We'll go to another 3/4 of an hour. And next one, thanks. And so we go now to the lower reflection of the first ray, or the reflection, I don't know if you can call it lower, very powerful ray of ceremony, order and magic. If we could go to the next slide. Thanks, Astrid. And of course, this is the energy of this. In this energy ceremony, you see people who have this ray within them. I'll just pause for a second. Astrid, have we got a problem? Oh, well,
No.
no.
Don't you have a slide?
Excuse us, Stu. This is just the sort of one of the things that happen when we work like how we work. Okay, so seventh ray ceremony, order and magic, and my most favourite seventh ray type in the world, I think, is Queen Elizabeth II. Probably first ray there, but seventh ray. And the reason that I say seventh ray is she is so courteous and disciplined. She's never displayed those negatives of the first ray. She's very strong, self-reliant, a wonderful ritualist, and so I just admire her so much after so many years of being in the public scene. I think she's had a very stabilising presence for the British Kingdom, which Australia is still in, and New Zealand, and that as head of the kingdom. Very interestingly, if my memory serves me right, her coronation was at the time when Venus transited across the sun. And that's supposed to be a very auspicious time, spiritually auspicious time, and her coronation happened at that time. And I think we had her celebrations this last time it happened. Was it last year? The year before, her celebrations, her jubilee, fell on that when it was coming across again. So those are just little signs that for me as an astrologer I interpret as this person being very special and important for the culture and the time in which she in particular was born. And so we get in there, but on the negative side of it you get standardization. And if you have a look at that little slide I've got down the bottom with the bricks in there, what seventh ray people do is try and standardize everyone. And that's perhaps the negative side of seventh ray, trying to reduce and force people into a model which suits the person who's being the enforcer and doing the enforcing. And so we get that's the negative side of it. If we go to the left, we've got the peacock there, and so seventh ray types are very, very aware of how they look. So we get a lot of people have got their physical bodies on the seventh ray. So if you have a physical body that's more finely bone, if you have natural grace and rhythm, a keen sense of rhythm, and you're a natural ritualist, you probably have a seventh ray physical. If you glide when you walk, you've probably got a seventh ray physical. I have a seventh ray physical, and if it was appropriate I would get up and I would walk around and show you how I could glide around the room. So if all you men and women are listening, if you can glide around the room when you walk, or put on the little strut like that, you probably have a seventh ray physical. The other physical type, third ray, when they walk, it's particularly, unless they've got seventh ray somewhere else, they're very, very ungraceful and can clop along and don't care what they appear like, and don't care so much about their dress. But strong seventh ray people would not step outside their house without being well groomed, because they have such a keen sense of how things should look and how they should present themselves. And so there, and the next slide, thanks. And of course, when it's taken to the nth degree, when it's taken too far, then we can get the negative types. If we can just click over to the next slide, thank you, Astrid. And we get people like, if we think of the magician, Aleister Crowley, the met us now, yes, I've got him in there in the middle. If you have a look at the bald-headed man in the middle. There we have a ritualist on the left-hand path, who advocated do what thou wilt. It was such a very selfish, dangerous attitude. And Timothy Leary, the great drug guru in the 60s, was a disciple, called himself a disciple of Crowley. Do what they will, do what thou wilt was his catch cry, of course, and that's very first-rate seventh ray. And then we have the other Nazis who were reportedly interested in the occult. Himmler and Hess were too, and I have their pictures down the bottom. And even I understand that Hitler had a great interest in the occult as well. And so we have here the seventh ray and the ability to organize and implement the law, and very powerful ritualists in a sense. Hitler, in a way, they walked around. He used to practice how to talk and to really influence his viewers, and he used to practice all his gestures and everything. So he perhaps had a seventh ray physical body as well, first ray personality, I would think, in a seventh ray physical body. So he had that power, double power that comes through. And then we get politicians like perhaps Thatcher. Now put her in there, and then she probably, I'm not advocating that she was an evil person at all. She had very rightist policies, but very much wanted to really create this model of how, and this is the right-wing model, of course, of really controlling the economy and controlling what people spend and control how much governments spend in order to get the economy balanced, which is very narrow in that, but it doesn't focus on people or the needs of people, and it is a great enemy, of course, this type of attitude to social programs and to the social well-being. So there we have some seventh ray people, and if we move to the next slide, I've got some more advanced types there, and on the right I've got the ritualists, some Masons, famous Masonry, which is a ritual, and we've got there some of the Truman, the president, and also Andrew Jackson I've got there as well. Who was the president, the seventh one I think he was, and Andrew Pike up the top, a great Mason who started an order. And so we've got the higher type of ritualists, and Masonry, for those who don't know, is really a benevolent brotherhood. I know it's had bad press through the years, but I've been a Mason in my day, and co-Masonry they call it, and really it is the most benevolent organisation. And so we've got those great ritualists there. At the bottom I've got David Copperfield, who is the magician, and he's got a very seventh ray look. And the seventh ray look is an aristocratic look. And you can see that there are others on that page that have the aristocratic look, like Jackie and Margot Fontaine and Audrey Hepburn. And even if you have a look at Obama's face, because it is the ray that rules magic and devas, the angelic kingdom. And as you know, that devas usually have pointed ears, and I think that Obama, if you have a look at his ears, is very pointy, and he certainly has this courteous way that he expresses himself, and I suspect he has a seventh ray physical body. And he likes working with a team more so than some of the first ray types do, and seventh ray people are very team oriented. They like to work with a team, good at negotiation, but at the end of the day they are the bosses. So you can see that aristocratic look in some of those women especially, and David Copperfield. Even Andrew Jackson, if you look at him, has got a very fine look about him. And Queen Elizabeth as well. And right in the middle there in the little hat, I have Emily Post, a picture of her, and of course she was a great matriarch of good manners. And and when you listen to her, there's some YouTube videos on her talking. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so proper, and the things she's talking about and how one eats and conducts themselves. It's so correct and so proper. It's really a delight to listen to. All right, so that's the 7th rate. Now, are there any of our students who think they might have a 7th ray physical body that dance well and can walk gracefully? If so, put your hand up. Maybe you can just say a few words about yourself. All right, well, no one at the moment. I'm hypothesizing a 7th ray. Oh, Andrea again. All right, Andrea, tell us how you move around and what's your 7th ray, how you express it.
Yes, I kind of identify with the characteristics that the 7th ray physical expresses, but I also see it reflected in the way I process thoughts. So the brain, very, very ordered. I like order. I like patterns. I like order. I'd say order. I like to do things. I like ordered surroundings. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Andrea. And that is so important, because if you do have a 7th ray physical like Andrea does and like I do, if you would find, Andrea, would you not, that if you have disorder around you, that it disorients you. I can't function in a disordered environment. I have to tidy up everything so that I know where it is, and then I feel more comfortable in an environment like that. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I have my own order. Sometimes it doesn't really follow the, you say the more conventional order, but I have my order, and it has to be in order for me to feel at ease, and I can move on to other tasks and things.
That's excellent. Thank you, Andrea. And Karsten, I also, you've taken your hand down, Karsten. Would you like to put your hand up again and say a few words?
Yeah, I like to dance, and I like to implement rules, and I don't like to follow them. I like rituals and some of these things, but I don't know if I have ceremony body. But I like to dance. Yeah, that's that.
Yes, it sounds possibly like, Karsten, you might have, can you be, when you walk, are you quite graceful for a man in the way that you walk?
No, not when I'm walking, but I can be when I'm dancing. I'm Capricorn, you know, we have a kind of feminine aspect also.
Yes, I can remember your picture. You have quite a fine bone face, so it could be that you have a 7th ray physical body. You said you don't like following rules, and I think you've got a 3rd ray somewhere, maybe your mind ray or your personality, because they don't like following rules at all. And you're a salesman, which is a 3rd ray profession. So perhaps you, and usually when we become more developed and we're starting to develop our mind in these higher energies, then it can control the lower energies, like, for example, in our physical body. So thank you for sharing that, and it gives another example of how these rays work out. So was there anything else you could add to that?
No, that's okay.
All right, thank you, Karsten. Anna, I see your hand up then. Tell us how your 7th ray physical moves, or how you use it.
I think in the way as you said, I need order in my environment in order to be able to function. And as a previous student said, an order of my type. I mean, maybe it's not an order that I mean it's very it's an order I put for things. And the other thing is that when I think of something, of a job I have to do or something, I think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just count in myself. 1, I have to do this. 2, this. 3. I don't know if this is 7th ray or something else, but I have it a lot.
Oh, that sounds like the 7th ray, Anna. And that is, what about your appearance? When you go out, do you like to make sure that you're well groomed?
Well groomed. Okay, I'm a little bit easygoing, but I like the colors being very matched. I don't like putting on something that doesn't match. I mean, my blouse with my with my pants. I want something the colors to be very matched.
That's a good 7th ray thing, balancing those colours. And so, yes, it sounds like, Anna, that you could have it there. You don't necessarily, if you've got a 7th ray physical, want to be well groomed. I have it, and I certainly, with my 1st ray personality, I really couldn't care how I dress. I mean, I do care, but as for perfect grooming and that, I don't care about that. I just throw clothes on. But I do select, like you, Anna, I do select colours that I like. I cannot wear colours that with the vibration. There's something about colours I don't like. Oh, I can't wear
I'm
those.
very sensitive on colors. I mean, I cannot put on colors that do not match.
I see, yes. All right, well, thank you for that, Anna, and thank you for sharing. So those are the hardline rays of the 1st and the 7th, and you can see there was quite a difference between them in their expression. In the 1st ray types, they don't care about what other people think. They are a law unto themselves. The more evolved types, however, when the soul is coming through, they use their 1st ray power for the higher good. When we come down to the 7th ray,
Leoni,
then we get, yes?
I'm sorry, Marianne wanted to add something. She has a 7th ray physical, but she can't raise her hand. So let me see if I can, there, I've unmuted you. Can you speak now, Marianne?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Marianne, and tell us, I've seen your photo and you have a very 7th ray look. You have a bit of an aristocratic look, I would say. Am I correct?
I suppose you're right, yes. I never thought of that.
Yes.
Well, appearance and excessive perfectionism, that's really me. I mean, I have 5 planets in Virgo.
Ah, yes.
In conjunction. And I have a system for everything in my house. I know just where everything is. And I have a thing about the perfect grooming. I wouldn't go out without looking okay. And I'm very color conscious. And this about the dancing and walking gracefully. Yes, that is me too.
It sounds to me, Marianne, like you might have a 7th ray personality as well. Okay. When you have it, and of course the 7th ray personality is flowing, the personality ray flows through your sun sign. So if you have a Virgo sun sign like that, you have the double whammy there, which what astrologers say, in that you have this ray of order flowing through a sign which is notorious for wanting everything to be perfect. So you do have that double emphasis. So I would expect with anyone like you who have that, has that double emphasis, that they would be very, very concerned and put a lot of store by that, because it's just your makeup, in your inherent makeup. So thank you for sharing that. Was there anything else you could add?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for sharing that. It's really good to get somebody who is more seventh ray than perhaps the other three of us who have shared our examples, who don't quite have that order thing going. There are seventh ray types I know, students of mine who come along. I know one who, when she hangs things on the line, not only do they have to be perfectly hung, but she colour coordinates her pegs as well. So she had a double seventh ray, and of course, you know, when I hang things up, I just am so first ray, I just throw them on the line and get their pegs on. So even though I have a seventh ray physical, my first ray personality is stronger because it drives through, and it's more important to get the washing up on the line fast than to hang them up so neatly so everyone can see how good you are with your washing and that. So this is just something for you students to think about as you are starting to look at your own rays. Yes, we might have these different rays in us, but there'll be one or two that are more dominant than the others. Thank you very much, Marianne, for sharing. And now we'll move on to our mind rays, given a lot of time to that, but I'm hoping, students, that you really got a good sense about that power ray. Remember the explosion of the volcano. Next slide, thanks. That volcano coming through really in its raw fashion in first ray types, and in a more moderated fashion. I'll have the next slide, thanks Astrid, and a more moderated way in the seventh ray type, because it is a very well organized and ordered ray. So now we've gone to the hard line ray, but this hard line flows through the mind ray. And there we have that. And I want you to first get the sense of that kaleidoscopic picture in the middle and imagine it moving around, because this is what a third ray can really be like. It is the third ray, the energy of intelligent activity. And so you can get people, if they've got a third ray personality, may not necessarily be too intelligent, but they have a lot of activity going. But usually, if you've got a third ray personality, you're cunning and you can think. And my most favourite icon of the third ray type is the used car salesman, and I've got a little picture down the bottom of there. So there's the used car salesman holding up dollar signs, because the third ray rules money and gold, which is why excuse me, I have the coins in the bottom as well. It rules communication in a sense, and I have the man down there with the tongue hanging out and talking. I have the brain on the left-hand side, really representing that intelligent aspect. The third ray is really is the ray of matter. If we think that the first ray is the energy of spirit, the second ray is the energy of the soul, the third ray is the energy of body, or and it rules matter. So, and where the third ray is seen out there in nature is that everything in nature knows what it needs to do to reproduce and to survive. And that is the third ray intelligence at work in nature, in what we might think are non-intelligent kingdoms, such as the plant kingdom or insects or butterflies. That third ray intelligence in matter is a latent, inherent, intelligent, implanted by God, the design of God, and everything knows, every creature knows what it has to do in order to reproduce and to survive. And so in human beings, of course, it can give a brilliance, a mind, or brilliance and cunning mind, or a cunning mind without necessarily being too intelligent. It rules subterfuge, and that the little symbol down the bottom right-hand corner, I've got a magician. So it rules not the magical ray is the seventh ray, and the magician is there because it veils. A magician can veil, and what you see is not necessarily what you get. And that's what third ray types do. They can throw a veil over anything, over themselves. For example, you get the used car salesman, or a salesman selling anything, and I'm thinking of you, Carsten, at this time. And the good salesman studies the psychology of the person that they're trying to sell to, and they modify their approach, adapt their approach to be able to sell to that person. And so that's really how the third ray personality type works, or even the soul works. Understands the consciousness of the person that they are dealing with, and they're moderating their approach so that they can, in the case of the selfish person, manipulate that person and get them to do what they want, or for the more advanced type, so that they can go in and help that person exactly in the way that they need to be helped. And so next slide, thanks, Astrid. And so we will look at some famous types, perhaps, of third ray types. So third ray gives generally, I've got up the top the qualities of adaptability, mental fertility, versatility, oratory, clever in business. Advanced threes can have brilliant intellects. On the left-hand side, I've got the selfish ray 3 traits: intellectual pride, inaccuracy, absent-minded, con artist, deviousness, a liar, manipulative, hyperactive, excessive thought without practical actions. So these are just some of the type. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off. So we have just some of the types. Now my favourite one in the current times is right in the middle. We have Stephen Six-Texting Weiner. And I would really encourage you to, if you want to see a third-rate personality in action and trying to lie his way out of trouble, have a look at some of his videos on YouTube, and he is just so gorgeously third ray in trying to lie his way out of sex texting. For those who don't know, he's a politician and was taking the moral high ground, as so many of them do, over some area or another, and was exposed for being a cheat on his wife and for sex texting all these women. And when he was caught out, tried to lie his way out of trouble and try to keep a straight face. It's really funny. I find it funny. I find it really gorgeous. And that photo there is just really so third ray. I'm not really lying, he's saying, trust me. And he's got the smile on his face, and everyone will say, no, not trusting you. Okay. And then we have down the bottom right-hand corner, Timothy Leary, who was the drug guru in the 60s, and I mentioned him before. He claimed to be a disciple of the seventh ray warlock, I call him, and do what thou wilt. And of course he had quite a following in the 60s. He taught at a university and had quite a following, but there were LSD, I think, was a prominent drug, and of course a lot of people came to their death, and amongst the students as well. And so he had his day of glory and fell from grace in the public eye as the extent to which his influence was seen and how dangerous the drugs could be. On top right, I've got Bernie Madoff, and I mentioned him also before. as running the big Ponzi scheme that defrauded people out of millions of dollars, and he had clients that were celebrities, and so a lot of people lost money over him. And it was very interesting. It was his sons who exposed him when they found out what he was doing. They exposed him. A terribly hard thing to do, and it must have been the whole business was terrible. And one of his sons, who helped to expose him, killed himself, suicided 2 years on the date that Bernie was exposed. So the disgrace and the reaction from family and people, and that was just too much to bear. So that's a third ray, playing with money and all of these things, and greedy, and that's just the karma that can come back and bite you. And then on the left-hand side, I've got Charles Manson, who was a guru in a way, with his own little group, and had his vision about how he would like to see the world reshaped into a model that he put forward. So there was a lot of first ray in him, but also a lot of third ray, and you can see it in his face. He probably had a third ray personality, that tricky mobile face that he's got. You can see that in him. And we'll go to the next slide. Thanks, Astrid. And so we certainly have these third ray working out negatively in people like this. And of course they weren't all bad. Well, like especially Stephen Weiner is certainly having his positive effect in politics, or has had, and he's got time to rehabilitate himself. Whether Charles Manson ever does, well, it doesn't seem likely. And now we've got some of the real famous people of today. Bill Gates, perhaps famous, but of these types, all these different types of these brilliant intellects, which is why I put these people up there. And I've seen videos of all, excepting of course Plato, and the most third ray in his presentation was Steve Jobs, who created the Apple organization. So if you want to see a really great third ray brilliant type, have a look at Steve Jobs. If you see the video where he and Bill Gates were talking together, even though Bill Gates had a brilliant intellect, he was not so changeable and dynamic and fast talking. So I think perhaps Steve Jobs may have had a third-ray personality, because you see the personality more obviously, or third-ray mind, whereas I think perhaps Bill Gates had a third-ray personality, third-ray soul, and had some different personality. So, but the point here is that these people have used their intellectual brilliance for the higher good, and which is why they're here. Certainly Einstein was arguably the greatest mind of all, and when you see his presentation, there was no third ray in him at all. He was very slow talking. Of course, English was not his first language, but he probably was a third ray soul working through possibly a fifth ray personality, I think. Then in the middle, Stephen Hawking, all brain, certainly a brilliant intellect, possibly working through a fifth ray personality, because he was very stilted and awkward. And so there we have a little synopsis of the third ray. So I wondered whether any of the students, or before we go, student Astrid, do you think you've got a third ray in you anywhere? Because for those who may not know, one of the Astrid, who's a student and also an organizer, do you mind me sharing what your day job is, Astrid?
No, go ahead, Leonie. That's what I was going to.
Well, no, I'll leave it to you then. You tell them.
Okay, I trade foreign currency for a living. I'm a day trader, and that requires think of the spider web. I have to be aware of what the economy is of the countries I'm trading, and how the economy of Europe, for example, affects the economy of the US. And that tells me whether I should be buying or selling euro US dollar. So I'm pulling all the strands of the spider web together to try and make a picture to tell me whether I should be trading that currency pair or not trading that currency pair.
All right. Well,
I will also say on the negative side of that, though, day trading is addictive. I'm trying to wean myself off it at the moment. Addictive in that it's very difficult to leave your screen to go and do other things because you're frightened of missing a trade.
That's very interesting. Before you go, have you managed to place that third ray anywhere, Astrid?
I think it's part of my personality.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting.
Add the third ray to the ray 1 in my personality, and it's hard to handle sometimes.
Yes, all right. All right, thank you for that. So we've got a really good example, because day trading, so the stock market, of course, is so third ray. Remember that the third ray rules money. So all those professions which involve the trading, stock market, banking and things like that are all connected with the third ray. And if you have a strong passion in that area or you work in that area, it could be that you've got the third ray in you somewhere, like Astrid has. And so is there anybody else in the students amongst you all who think you might have a third ray lurking in you somewhere? Okay, so no hands going up. So we'll go straight on to the fifth ray then. So the next two slides, I think it is, Astrid, will take us to the where the symbols are. And so the fifth ray, if we remember, is a reflection of the third ray, which is the mind ray in really expanded. When you come down to the fifth ray, it's a much more narrow expression of the great mind energy. Next slide as well, thanks Astrid. So it is a much narrower presentation, and so whereas the third ray mind is everywhere, going everywhere all the time like this, and their wheels are always turning, with the fifth ray it's much more linear and logical and forward moving. And so I've got a very interesting slide up there, and I've got in the middle a good symbol for the fifth ray, which is the brain really working and ticking over. But up the top I've got a rose, and for a lot of people who think of the concrete mind as being scientific and logical and having no sense of beauty or things like that, perhaps you don't think like that, but you know, that's well, the Tibetan gives a lovely quote, and I've got that on the left hand side if you'd like to read that with me. Ray 5, on which a man learns to use all acquired knowledge of the form divine in such a way that the inner life is served and the outer form becomes a magnetic expression of the divine life. It is the ray of intelligent love above all else. So you can see there the Tibetan is talking about the ultimate goal of the fifth ray. Yes, fifth ray people can really get bogged down in detail and science. They are the great skeptics, and they reject anything that you can't prove by science. But ultimately, the high goal of this ray is the true seeker on the fifth ray will keep investigating nature until they reveal the truth of the soul. And the soul, as we know, is beauty, is love, is compassion. And so this is why I have the rose there. And I'm hoping that this image on the screen will really help shape your understanding of this great ray of fifth ray, because most people that you see on Earth, scientists, and that they certainly show only that very, to my mind, colorless and sort of expression of the fifth ray, very monotone. if you fourth ray mind people like me go along to a lecture and the lecture is being given by a fifth ray type who just sit there and talks and there's no expressions and they've got no slides or colour, well, in 5 minutes I go to sleep or I get very bored, and there will be some of you who would be just like me, that find it very hard to listen to someone that doesn't accompany their what they're talking about with some other visual display, because fourth ray minds, the colourful minds, need that. However, there might be some of you who might have a fifth ray mind who think, yes, that's what I like. All I want is the information. I don't want anything to distract me from getting that information. If so, you probably have a fifth ray mind. Next slide, thanks, Astrid. And so I've got, who am I? The great question. That's such a fifth ray question. Who am I? And then I've got the Bunsen burner and the science apparatus just at the bottom of the screen there. And as we turn over to the next slide and we start to see, look at one or two famous, well, the most famous fifth ray scientist of all time, notorious one would be Joseph Mengele, who was the Nazi doctor who experimented on his prisoners, did some atrocious experiments. And so we see negative fifth ray traits, if you'll read those with me. Ultra-rational, arrogant mind, separative, prejudiced, judging, lack empathy, lack emotions, no emotionalist, control through knowledge, colourless, socially awkward nerd. And so this man, Mengele, did these terrible things, and he just did them. Well, one can only know why we did them. I've looked at his astrology chart, and yes, I think he has Aquarius very strong, and Aquarius can be very detached from their feelings in their negative side. And so he had that very strong. And of course, Aquarius rules science. It's one of the signs. So if you're looking for these type of people, often I look to see if they've got any important planets in Aquarius, or Uranus, the scientific planet, very strong, controlling their psychology. So there, and we have on the left-hand side some terror, in my mind. Well, today we would think they were terrible experiments, but down the bottom, the Soviet scientist who grafted another dog head onto an Alsatian and had them both working as well. And up the top we had another Soviet scientist who kept a head alive by hooking it up to apparatus, so at least could make it move by operating some electricity and that. So we would think, especially that top one, the lack of regard for animal life, because it was different back there 100 days ago. The sensitivities that we have towards animals and not making them suffer just wasn't around 100 years ago, from my understanding. So we might call them evil today, but probably back then they were may have been considered to be great scientists. However, I don't think that anyone could say the same about Mengele, that what he was doing would have been considered very evil at the time, because some of the experiments that he did caused such harm and suffering to those people that he surgically experimented on. Next slide, thanks, Astrid. So there is the fifth ray, the science ray, at its worst, you could see, and other scientists or people who use their fifth ray for evil purposes would be fit into that category as well. But also, of course, we've got the yes, well, I should have taken those negatives off on the right-hand side. But on the left-hand side, we have these great fifth-ray people, and amongst the very highest, we have the Curie, Pierre and Marie Curie, great scientists, and the Tibetan mentioned Marie Curie as being a disciple, and of course she discovered radium. Fine types. And then my favorite, I think, scientist of all time, because he brought us light, Thomas Edison, and there he is with a light bulb. So he lit the world. I always think of Thomas Edison as a modern-day Prometheus, bringing light to the world. And down the back, also another famous scientist of mine, my favorite, is Tim Berners-Lee. And for those who don't know, he designed the internet. He and gave it away freely. He was just a nerd. He calls himself a scientist who, in the early days of computers, discovered that one computer could not communicate with another computer of a different model. He didn't like that, so he developed a platform which enabled computer A to talk with computer B, developed that technology, and then gave it away freely to the world. If he had kept royalties, patented it, he would have been perhaps the richest man in the world today, but he gave it away freely. He just loved science, and one of my very favorite human beings on earth today, and beautiful soul. He has some videos on YouTube. He's very nerdish when you listen to watch him talk. He's so fifth rate. If you want to go and look at Tim Berners-Lee at some of his videos on YouTube, you can see what I am talking about. And there are many wonderful scientists, and I just put Alexander Fleming there, who discovered penicillin, as being and also a great, but there have been so many great scientists who have worked as they do to try and help humanity and help stop the suffering of humanity. So on these this line of third ray, fifth ray, next slide, thanks Astrid, third ray, fifth ray, we have all these people with their minds and trying to use their minds in the best way that they can to solve the problems of humanity, and that is the great gift that they give to humanity. So, yes, I thought there was another slide. That's all right. So, is there anyone at all that identifies with the fifth ray that would like to just talk about themselves and how they see the world, and that just to help expand our understanding?
Marion's got her hand up.
Hi, Marion. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Leoni.
Hi.
I didn't think I had any fifth ray in me, but when you had the rose there, I can maybe relate to that because I really study the flowers. Like some flowers have got like multiple flowers on them, but they might have 6 petals or they might have 7, or and it always intrigued me is why this was. So I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I think you could have Marion. I know Marion, folks. She lives in Brisbane as well. Marion is trained as a trained nurse, used to be a nurse in surgery, and certainly has that sort of fifth ray, the way that you speak, Marion, is always careful, and you are careful about what you say, which is what fifth ray people do. Fourth ray mind people can just blurt sometimes, and they try and give a feeling about what they're thinking, but they often exaggerate. Fifth ray people don't do that, and I have, in observing you, Marion, I have not ever seen you exaggerate at all, I think. So I think you might consider having a fifth ray mind.
I think maybe that might be quite true, because working with the body fascinates me, and it just exudes so much about itself when you're working with it. It's just staggering.
All right, well, thank you, and that's great. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Is there anyone else who would like to share that thinks they might have that fifth ray somewhere?
Well, I think I have it in my mental.
Okay, yes, Biel, would you like to talk about how you experience it?
Well, first I'd like to say I tend more towards the concrete knowledge and less of the scientist, although I really enjoyed working with scientists when I had that opportunity. But I love to study things, and I take things and I try and analyze them. I gather as much info as I can about a subject. I organize it in what I think is meaningful ways. I put it in spreadsheets. I make tables and look at it this way and that way. I'm very slow and methodical in the way that I look at things before I make my decisions. I'm very slow and methodical in the way I think about things before I say them. Working with students, I can agonize for a long time over answers, what may seem like a simple answer, because I want to make sure that I have that correctness, that I have that accuracy, and that I'm giving an impartial conclusion to whatever it is. I'm very one-tracked in my processes. I need quiet and isolation. I can't have disruptions in the middle of what I'm trying to do. Let me see. Well, I guess that's a pretty good rundown of how my fifth ray mind works.
Yes, thank you for that. That was very clear. And if you noticed how both those ladies talked, the presentation was quite ordered and logical in the way it came out. So good examples of the fifth ray mind. So I see that we've sort of run out of time, and just talk about, I've still got your questions, Andrea, that I haven't answered yet. So, I see your hand up as well. Yes, Andrea, what would you like to say?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about what I kind of thought the mental body was. I thought it was a fourth mental body because I tend to weigh things and then arrive at a final answer or understanding. But the more I see the fifth ray and the way it processes information and the way I study, I'm methodical. I can study straight for 4 or 5 hours nonstop. I have to look at the time to let me know that it's time to put the books aside. But I don't know if that's part of what we're doing, if that's part of our drive to know more in what we're studying. So
yes. Thank you for that, Andrea, for sharing. One of the things about the rays, it's such a fascinating science. It takes time when you're introduced to them to try and fit where each of these rays play out on which body. Now, next month we're going to be doing that. We're going to be looking at the particular rays that play through different bodies, whether they're on the physical, emotional, mental, or soul level or personality level, and so that will help your students sort some of that out. But Andrea, it takes years sometimes to sort it all out, and who knows whether that fifth ray is your mind, or that order and that ability to work for long hours. See, that could be a first ray thing as well, and because the first ray will drive the mind body if it has to finish something. So in time we can sort these things out. So and so do that. Now, just while I've got you, Andrea, I'll just quickly answer your questions. You said, can rays influence on any particular body, or a change in a lifetime. Yes, you can. Your body's, your ray can change, but usually only at an advanced level. So, for example, if you have an emotional ray, the 6th ray, it's sometimes, my understanding, it does change onto the 2nd ray if during the course of that lifetime you really refine it and open it up so it's flowing in compassionate love to that. So it might change. And also, if your soul ray, if you're really advancing on the path, then you could shift from a lower ray, 4, 5, 6 or 7. If your soul is on that ray, you can shift to a higher ray, 1, 2 or 3. And that could happen in a life. But as I said, only at a very advanced stages of the path. And then if you're, the other question is,
sorry, I'm a bit redundant on the questions. And
yes, I think I've answered the main question that you had there. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask me about the rays to do with the question? Because for everyone, Andrea sent questions to me by email. Was there anything else I haven't covered?
no, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Andrea. And thank you. I'm closing it now because we've run out of time. I usually try and make it 1.5 hours. Thank you so much for sharing, and for those who were brave enough to share from your own experience, thank you. It helps to make it so much richer. And so I'll say goodbye now, and lots of love to you all, and for the days coming up, we're all students on the path together, and it's very happy to share this hour or so with you in person, and I'll meet you again online very soon, I am sure. So bye for now. So you can close down BL, the webinar now. Thank you.
Okay, good night, everybody. Well, good night for me.
Bye-bye,
Good morning
everyone.
to you.
Bye.